Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna do a cozy little studio project, and I'm gonna show you how I ended up painting wood ornaments with 3 different types of paint. That's acrylic, watercolor, and gouache, all on wood. These are all generously given to me by Arteza, and the acrylics are the newest product that I've received from them, and I was hesitant but also excited to try out the acrylics. As many of you know, I have worked with acrylic a lot in college, but have since gone full force into watercolor. So I thought a project where I compared the 3 side by side on a fun holiday themed project would be really fun. So as you can see, I have a couple different ornament styles. These wood ornaments are really cheap from Michael's, I believe, and I decided to try testing out painting specifically watercolor on wood, since I know that that's possible but have never really known how to do it. And so I prepped all of these wood pieces, which I will show you in a second, but first I had to paint the backs of these round ones because they had this sort of weird painted design on them that I didn't really like, and so I had this cheaper sort of blue chalk paint that I decided to paint on them.
With your eyes very slowly and try and move your hand in the same way that your eye is moving. However, when you're drawing a particular subject such as faces or animals and things, you kind of want...
So once the backs of those were done, I prepped the front surface that I was going to be painting on, and this included me painting clear gesso in multiple layers and then lightly sanding. I think I ended up using about 2 to 3 layers of gesso. You can sand in between each of those layers. So here are my sketches. I actually did these digitally, which was really fun. I just recently got the newest iPad that has the Apple Pencil capabilities, and so I decided to sketch these out, and they ended up being just about the size of the round ornaments. And then got my graphite carbon paper. I believe this is from Daiso Japan because I love it there. And this is just a way of transferring an image to something like wood or a canvas or something like that when you don't have something like paper that is see-through, to be able to transfer with like a light box like I would normally use. And so I taped on the carbon paper and then just transferred the pieces.
I am doing a series of paintings that are based on different Boston restaurants, and it's going to have like a little opening and an ice cream shop.
So I decided to go with 3 fairly simple little animal designs with a fox, a raccoon, and a bear, and added my sort of greenery around the outside. I wanted something fairly simple, but then when I started painting them, I realized they were still quite detailed, especially for being so small. That ended up having me run into problems with painting them, especially with the gouache and acrylic. That's a lot thicker paint without having highly detailed brushes, and just in general, it ended up being a little bit frustrating. We're gonna jump right in with watercolor. I was excited to see how well the watercolor would take to the surface, and I wanted to start there since that's something I have been so familiar with for the past 3 or so years. I did notice that quite a bit of the water did soak in to the wood as well as the pigment, but it did sit on top of the wood enough that I could blend it a little bit. You can see that here, as well as layering just a little bit. My tests without the gesso, the pigment and water just soaked right in and spread out and sort of bled out, and so this is actually quite helpful. I think if I were to add a little bit more in way of layers with the gesso. I think I would have gotten a little bit of a better result, but I still think it turned out pretty well. I also ended up painting just a little bit of blue to the outside since I really wanted the wood to come out like the white of the paper, so the white of the fox. And so what you see, the lightest parts right now, are the wood coming through, and then I just added just a tiny bit of highlights there. I did end up using pencil to line this, and I was using my favorite Prismacolor, and then I realized I have the Arteza pencils, and so I got those out, but then realized that the color matching just wasn't quite there. Their indigo blue is just not quite as dark as I typically like it in my work, so I went back to my Prismacolor, but I do really like the Arteza colored pencils, so I might use those more in another project when I need slightly lighter line work. But I typically go to that indigo blue Prismacolor as my favorite to outline pieces, especially for watercolor. I think that ended up working really well for the watercolor just because it was softer and lighter, and the other two were quite bold, and so I ended up going with an ink liner, so a pen that was a similar dark blue, but they were quite bold. So I next went with acrylic, since I have used acrylic, and I've actually used acrylic on wood panel before. I don't think I properly prepared the surface, but I did do a couple acrylic pieces that were on wood back in college where I used acrylic probably most. And I will link the video up above where I actually talk about why I use watercolor now. And I tell the story about how I kept getting really frustrated with acrylic because of how thick it was. I kept wanting it to just glide a lot nicer and be able to blend a little bit easier. And I kept adding water to it and tried to basically turn it into watercolor, which is not what acrylic is made for at all. And I just ended up getting really frustrated. So I wanted to give it a go again with these brand new acrylic paints that were sent to me, and I ended up going in with these two kind of bold colors and realized very quickly that they dried pretty dark, and I just didn't like how dark the colors were. So I ended up painting over the purples with sort of lighter purples, a little bit more of a pastel kind of style, since that is more my color palette now. And so I painted over that, which ended up making quite thick layers. I probably didn't add enough water when I was mixing, but I am so used to over mixing the water into acrylic and other paints that I was trying to embrace the thicker paint, but I think I might have overdone that with the acrylic here, and I think I did that a little bit with the gouache as well. And I ended up getting a little bit better with the gouache at the end of that piece because I think I was starting to figure out the water to paint ratio since that is definitely different for all three of these paints. I also thought it was really interesting to do watercolor, then acrylic, then gouache, because I do have this idea that gouache is sort of the child between the two, sort of a mixture of acrylic with watercolor in the sense of it is very water soluble, you can mix with water fairly well, but it isn't transparent like acrylic is. It will lay on over top of everything and won't show anything underneath. But I notice I really do like gouache over acrylic, and I realized this while making this piece, how shiny the acrylic ended up being. I think a lot of that was how many layers I did, but just in general, acrylic paints are sort of a glossy or shiny finish, and I really enjoy the matte qualities of gouache. So I went in with a permanent marker. I wanted to use sort of a cheaper pen just to make sure that if I did end up drawing on the acrylic and it messing up the pen, it was something cheaper. But it ended up working fairly well, and I think I ended up going with my Copic multi-liner for the gouache piece. So here we are mixing the colors for the gouache, and this ended up actually being the next day. I actually got fairly frustrated with the acrylic, and this whole project I think ended up taking longer than I was hoping it would. I am excited about making these, and I've seen so many other artists making ornaments, whether they're sewing them or painting them, and I really wanted to jump on the bandwagon, so to speak, but also I really wanted to make some of these to be able to have available at an upcoming holiday market that I will be at as an artist selling my art. So I will be at the San Jose Craft Holiday Fair. That will be coming up in a few weeks, and I wanted to have some holiday themed gift ideas, so I went with these wooden ornaments because I've had these pieces, especially these round ones, for a really long time, and I've been wanting to turn them into something, and I just never knew what. And I think an ornament was the perfect option since they have the hole in the top and it's a really good size. So one thing I am a little frustrated by with how my gouache piece turned out is, for some reason, I started with some of the plants in the background, and then I wanted to duplicate somewhat the color scheme of the fox, and so I did this purple and pinky sort of gradient on the fur, not realizing that the mask around the eyes as well as down the nose should have been a darker color, not a lighter color. And so when I went in to paint what was left, I was thinking, oh, this is all the white fluff parts. So I painted the mask and the little eyebrows and the fluff in the ears all white, and I think it still sort of reads as a raccoon, but I think raccoons, being so known for their black or darker masks over their eyes and down their nose, and just those markings in general, I don't know if it quite reads well in this version, but I didn't really want to go back and change it because I wanted that contrast. I wanted the fur to be darker and then wanted to use the white. I think I also wanted to use white just because white used in gouache is just so lovely, and it was nice to be able to paint just straight solid white. And I really do like these gouache paints. I've mentioned it, I have a review of the watercolors. I'll link up above. They're not my go-to. They're a little bit less transparent than I would like, and they just aren't what I sort of gravitate toward. But I wanted to really compare all three of these, and so I was excited to kind of test them all side by side. And as far as I can tell, the gouache has been really lovely to work with, and the acrylic is acrylic paint. I'm not typically an acrylic artist anymore, so I'm not the go-to person for that, but I really liked being able to use all the colors and not have to mix too much. And as you can see, I added a little bit, maybe a lot of bit of this glitter Mod Podge that I got on clearance through Michael's. And I wanted something, I wanted to add some sparkle because I love really sparkly ornaments on the tree because of all the lights. They really show off all the sparkles, and so I wanted something a little bit sparkly. It was pretty fun to just sit down and paint these, even though they took a little bit more time than I had initially wanted, but they were really fun to make. Thank you to Arteza for sending me all these paints and allowing me to make something a little bit extra special for this holiday season. And as an added bonus, if you are interested in purchasing any of these paints, their pencils, or really any products from Arteza, I do have a special coupon code where you can get 10% off of your purchase if your order is placed by December 31st. That way you can get in some of those Christmas gift purchases, as well as helping to support this channel by using that affiliate link. All that information is listed down below. So let me know which one is your favorite. I think it has to be a tie between the watercolor and the gouache, not just because I liked using those the most. Just I liked the final product and how the little animals turned out. Make sure to like this video if you liked it, and make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss a thing, and join me on this art journey. That's it for me. I hope you have a creatively fulfilled day, and I will see you next time. Bye guys!